Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm LYNDALL STOUT. Warmer temperatures are making their way into Oklahoma just in time for the arrival of spring. To celebrate the much welcome change of season, we are focusing on some of our favorite stories that celebrate all things outdoors. We begin today with a story from 2014 that looks at how fire impacts a very interesting type of bird.
The Tallgrass Prairie Preserve that the Nature Conservancy manages is a wonderful outdoor laboratory. There's questions we can ask here that we can't ask anywhere else in Oklahoma.
They try to mimic what we think happened in Tallgrass Prairie, sort of pre-settlement or pre-sort of urbanization and agriculture, and that's that fire and grazing are allowed to interact. So they randomly burn areas, and after they burn them, as you can see, grazers are drawn to that burn area. It's got lush regrowth, it's got high protein, and as one of my colleagues put it, it's kind of like comparing a salad to a 2x4. So they're going to select this lush regrowth as opposed to areas that haven't been burned in a couple of years.
These shorter sections of prairie grass have another use as well. This is where greater prairie chickens come to mate.
Prairie chickens are a good indicator of the overall health, so to speak, of the prairie. Since they need all the different time-sense fires or all the different plant structures, if you've got them on the landscape, it's a good indication that all the other wildlife species are going to have the right habitat components as well. So they're kind of a good canary in the coal mine, so to speak, for other wildlife species.
That's why this team of scientists from Oklahoma State University comes to the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve. Over the first 3 years of this study, they looked into nesting ecology. But now in their 4th year,
basically what we do is capture these birds in the spring when they're on the lek, which is where the males congregate to breed, and we fit them with transmitters that allows us to see where the birds go, what kinds of plant communities they use, what their home range, and what their survival is. So what we're interested in is being able to provide livestock producers and land managers with some guidance on things that they can do that not only benefit livestock production, but also will keep prairie grouse, prairie chickens, and other wildlife species on the landscape.
while the birds prefer shorter, more recently burned grasses for booming, they need the taller, unburned grasses like this for nesting cover.
Birds typically lek in areas that have been recently disturbed, so areas that don't have a lot of vegetation, presumably so they can see predators as they approach lek sites. But then birds also need other parts of the landscape that are unburned. So the majority of the nests that I've monitored have been in areas that haven't been burned in greater than 2 years. So areas with taller vegetation, more litter accumulations, presumably so they can seal the nest from predators, but also through my research we found that those areas tend to be cooler. And then on top of that, they also have a life cycle where they have their chicks when they're brooding, and they seem to take birds out in areas that have been burned about a year ago, maybe up to 2 years ago, that have more forbs, kind of a canopy. If you think of it like a forest, it has kind of a canopy of forbs, but it has less litter, so they're able to move their brood through there and forage on insects. So they really require varying times post-fire and grazing for all of the life cycles, or all of their life history traits throughout their life cycle.
The other thing we've seen is they avoid tree cover. So having fire on the landscape is critical to keep prairies open and woody covered out. But having some areas unburned in a given year are really important for nesting. So it just really points to the fact that everything shouldn't look the same. We need burned areas, we need some unburned areas.
That knowledge should give Oklahoma's greater prairie chickens something to boom about. For SUNUP, I'm Austin Moore.
There are black bears in Oklahoma, but it wasn't until the late 1990s and early 2000s that the black bears started to expand from Arkansas into Oklahoma. So they're relatively newly returned to Oklahoma, but they were native here.
It's been a long road for black bears in Oklahoma, but Oklahoma State University researchers, in collaboration with the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation, were conducting den site checks while the collared female black bears were hibernating earlier this spring.
And then they decided to open up a hunting season in 2009. But after several years of harvest, they decided to initiate a reassessment of the population to see how hunting has affected their numbers, and also just to understand how they've continued to expand throughout the 4 southeastern counties that have an open hunting season. So I'm just continuing with the data set, trying to get a more robust assessment of what's going on. Because with a long-lived mammal species like black bears, 2 sampling seasons is really just a snapshot.
We're finding that our research has been extremely helpful to the Wildlife Department for them making their management decisions about hunting seasons and how many bears we have in each area and whether those populations are stable. It's great to work with the ODWC, and it's gratifying to know that the stuff we're doing on the ground is actually helping them make their decisions.
The really interesting thing about bears coming into Oklahoma is that they've been gone for over 80, 90 years from the state, and now they're moving back in, but it's completely different than it was because now they're moving back in to a human-dominated landscape. The bears in Oklahoma and in Arkansas are predominantly vegetarians. So the acorns in particular, in the winter, they get very, they go into a situation where they're trying to put on weight as fast as they can and as much as they can, and those acorns are a great food source for doing that. There's no instance of the bears attacking any livestock at all, and they're just not focusing on meat.
In your data, what are you looking for?
So we are, well, the data that we're collecting, collecting, reproductive data. This is why we do our den checks to determine how many cubs they're having, how many females, and then we're also looking at survival rates. We have about 26 bears collared right now, and so we can monitor their survival and know how many are getting harvested. Population growth for black bears is most sensitive to adult female survival. So this is why we primarily collar females, and also that's how we get the reproductive data. And so we can kind of get an idea of how they're surviving within each age class, yearlings, subadult, adults. From there, deduce if the population is growing or expanding or declining.
It's a much larger population, and even with the hunting season, this population is actually growing. It's doing well, it's more than stable, and it's got room to grow here. We'd prefer for them not to harvest our collared bears because it takes a lot of time and effort to get those collars on. And the grand scheme of what we're working on, that's just a success story, really.
Since our story first aired, there's been a milestone for the bear research team. For the first time in 18 years, one of the collared females gave birth to 4 bear cubs in February. We certainly wish them all the best as they continue their work. Now to a story from last spring about a popular festival that really rattles the town of Okeene each year.
Silence mixed with brief sounds of wind gusts. Quintessential Western Oklahoma. But take a wrong step out in these gypsum hills, and you may hear nature's most iconic warning. In Blaine and surrounding counties, the western diamondback rattlesnake is an abundant predator, but today this species is the one being hunted.
We get calls almost all year long. We go out quite often.
Todd Felder is a member of the Okeene Diamondback Club, a club established to help landowners manage rattlesnakes, and he's out on a call to help a producer with 2 snake dens on his property.
Their home is right over this hill. This is a snake den that the first time we hunted it, we found almost 20 snakes, 3 foot or bigger, most of them pushing 5 foot.
While the Diamondback Club's main objective is thinning out rattlesnakes, today's hunt is a little different. Todd and several other hunters are catching snakes as part of the 79th Okeene rattlesnake hunt.
The Okeene is the proud owner of the title of the oldest original rattlesnake roundup.
In the early days of settlement, Todd says folks would kill the snakes and display the carcasses in town. It became a huge draw for crowds, and it quickly turned into an event with a surprising mission.
Evolved into, well, if so many people are coming from town and this town and the other town to see these dead snakes, why don't we go catch them live, make an educational type festival out of it? We're still going to clean up these community grounds around us, do the good favor for the landowners that we're doing, but also educate the masses on the critical need for these snakes.
Rattlesnakes are still quite common, most notably the timber rattlesnake in the east and the western diamondback and the prairie rattlesnake in the western part of the state.
Extension Wildlife Specialist Dwayne Elmore says education is extremely important because there's a lot of paranoia when it comes to snakes, both venomous and non-venomous.
It's very rare for someone to get bit by any venomous snake. Almost all the bites you hear about are when someone was trying to kill the snake, trying to handle the snake. If you happen to get bit, most of the things you hear about to do are wrong. You don't want to cut the wound. You don't want to try to suck out the venom. Elevate the wound above your heart and quickly, within an hour or two, get to a hospital. We actually can legally harvest rattlesnakes if you have the appropriate license in Oklahoma. If you have a rattlesnake that you've killed for consumption or for the hide, be really careful with that snake. Even if it's dead, it can still potentially bite you. A lot of snakes that are non-venomous are confused with venomous snakes, but what you want to look for is whether or not it's a pit viper. And there are a couple of snakes that sometimes will flatten their head and appear to be a pit viper. The one that's probably most commonly confused with venomous snakes are the hognose snakes.
Although they may give you the creeps, both non-venomous and venomous snakes serve a purpose, and it's best to just leave them alone, or call an experienced snake handler like Todd to remove them from your property.
These are very beneficial animals. They control rodents just like non-venomous snakes do.
There's such a benefit or they wouldn't be here. We want the kids safe, we want you all safe, we want the dogs and cats and the cattle, all the livestock safe. And then they're going to have their place anyway.
Thousands of spectators will flow through the festival over the weekend, and you can bet Todd will be there, ready to educate them. In Blaine County, I'm Curtis Hare. From afar, they may look like normal Oklahoma birds. But look a little closer, and you'll notice these birds are quite different. This spring, shorebirds are flocking up to the Arctic and making pit stops on the wetlands of Oklahoma. Oklahoma State University wildlife researcher Craig Davis says thousands of shorebirds are migrating through the state, about 30 species in all, and our wetlands are essential to their journey.
Wetland habitats are critical for these birds to continue their migration, with many of these birds migrating all the way from South America to the Arctic, where they will then nest and bring off some young, and then starting in July they actually start migrating back through to head to their wintering grounds. The other thing that's really cool about the wetlands we have in the state is that you can kind of think of them as little gas stations that the shorebirds rely on to continue migrating. And so without those little gas stations, it makes it much more difficult for these birds to continue migrating.
Throughout the spring and over the next few months, bird watchers will get a chance to see diverse groups, including American avocets and long-billed doe-witchers.
A large majority of these birds are migrating through the central part of the state. Great places to go see shorebirds, the Salt Plains Refuge. It's a great place to see shorebirds. We have wildlife management areas like Drummond Flats, which is near Drummond, Oklahoma.
Experts say the rains in the recent months have given this season's shorebirds more resources, but over the years, they've been suffering.
Big picture we see with shorebirds is just the overall loss of wetlands that's happened over the last 100 years. And so we've seen shorebird numbers decline. Some species have probably declined 50 to 70% in their population.
Craig says that wetlands across the country have disappeared, and in Oklahoma alone, about 60% have vanished, mainly due to people filling in or draining the land. And the depletion has affected shorebirds and the environment.
When we think about, wetlands, oftentimes we think of wetlands as just being sort of just mud holes, but in reality, wetlands are critically important to shorebirds for migration. They provide a host of services that many people don't think about. Filtrating water, recharging groundwater, protecting against floods.
Moving forward, researchers will use methods to revive wetlands and educate landowners on the importance of these natural resources. For SUNUP, I'm Curtis Hare.
Birds are certainly not alone in migrating through Oklahoma. Here's a story from a few years ago about a research program on a favorite of mine, butterflies, and the fuel that they need to make the journey all the way north.
There's been a lot of concern about monarchs and habitat availability. They're being considered for listing as threatened under the Endangered Species Act.
Roadside management might be the key to breathe life into the monarch population. Researchers from Oklahoma State University and the Department of Transportation are looking for solutions. Kristen Baum is an associate professor in the Department of Integrated Biology at OSU.
I'm working with Dennis Martin, who's with the Department of Horticulture and Landscape Architecture, looking at mowing regimes. And so we're interested in what the timing and frequency of mowing does to milkweed availability for monarchs.
Monarch butterflies love milkweed. They lay their eggs in the plant and the caterpillars then feed off of it. Milkweed is abundant in pastures and along roadsides, but is typically mowed over, consequently leaving a void for monarchs.
So certainly there's aspects of mowing and roadsides that are extremely necessary. So for example, mowing the safety zone. And so that would be from the roadside over a distance, so that way when motorists need to pull over, or if you think around turns and at interchanges and things like that. So there's some parts of the roadside mowing that are not being considered for change.
While safety zones need mowing, a common practice is to mow beyond the safety zone and wider roadsides. Extension turfgrass specialist Dennis Martin has worked with ODOT in vegetation research and extension initiatives for 26 years. 2 years ago, Martin put in a proposal to ODOT to see if it could alter its mowing practices outside the safety zones.
Outside that clear zone or safety zone, they can try to improve habitat for pollinators such as the monarch. Not all of that area outside of there is suitable for use in habitat. Some of it contains a lot of invasive species, but some areas are quite high quality and can be worked with.
Well, ODOT has an interest in the monarch butterfly in that we don't want to see it become an endangered species. Just from a practical highway business standpoint, that would impact our highway programs, because like anytime we impact habitat for an endangered species, environmental issues come up with our projects, and we could perhaps have to start buying habitat or creating habitat if it were to become a listed species.
Mirth says ODOT jumped at Martin's proposal, and workers delayed mowing this summer when the monarchs moved through and set aside these plots near the university for Baum and Martin's research. It turns out other pollinators may also benefit.
So it's hard to put a value on one particular species, and so the monarch is a very iconic insect. It's one that's very well known, and you know, pretty much everybody you talk to has a monarch story about, you know, how they used to see, you know, tons, or they saw a roosting site where they kind of aggregate in the trees during migration, and so it's a species that a lot of people can relate to, and some of the practices and changes in management that we can do that would benefit monarchs could benefit a lot of other species as well.
But it's also an opportunity for improving things for posterity. It's a species that we can save, and it just requires a few tweaks of our management practices and habitat, not only improvement of habitat, but also habitat maintenance, and we can fix this problem.
The Monarch Research Project is a multi-year study that is just getting started. And though there are still a ton of questions left up in the air, scientists hope the results will keep the monarchs up there too. In Payne County, I'm Curtis Hare.
I mean, I learned to fish in the farm pond, and majority of kids do. That's where they learn to fish, because it's kind of hard for people to go fishing in a lake and have much success unless they know how the lake works out. We're one of only just a few states that still have this program. Most of them have went private. If you want to stock your farm ponds in other states, you have to purchase them.
Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation has a program set up for landowners in Oklahoma to help them stock ponds that are either new or reclaimed. And when I say reclaimed, I either mean they've been cleaned out, we've had a big drought and the fish have died, or they have killed all the fish in the ponds.
It's really a great program. It's really easy. I mean, these fish, if you tried to buy them, you're looking at several $100s just to stock a pond. And you're getting them for the cost of a fishing license, which is one of the qualifications. You have to have a fishing license to apply for the fish.
We have 3 different types of fish that we will give to you. You can have channel catfish, you can have bluegill, sunfish, or you can have largemouth bass. And you can choose 1, you can choose 2, or you can choose all 3, just kind of depending on what you want. If you want a new pond, I would suggest just all 3 to establish, you know, a new fish population into your pond.
Before you think about stocking your farm pond, you really should take the time to read all you can about general pond management for good fishing. If you simply start by stocking the farm pond, you may be wasting your time and effort. The biggest mistake we see are people stocking fingerlings. These are small little guys on top of a bass population. Even larger than that, they're going to be eaten by the bass. We don't recommend that. So wishful thinking does not accomplish good results.
The farm pond program, basically all these fish are a surplus. We're already raising these fish for the public waters. We put a few aside for our farm pond program. And then the catfish, we have the brood stock here. We let them spawn. We have kegs that we put out there, and we gather the eggs and bring them in and hatch them.
I come out, I make sure that, you know, you're the landowner. The pond has to be at least half an acre, surface acre in size.
Basically, the farm pond program was started because where do kids learn to fish? They learn to fish in farm ponds. And they are the future of the wildlife department because we are dependent upon license sales.
If by buying your fishing license, you're helping the wildlife department, you know, with future conservation efforts and restocking and helping, you know, other farmers utilize this program by buying your $25 fishing license through us, and then you get free fish. I mean, nothing's better than free.
Finally today, we revisit the veterinarian who has a pretty special side job using a live visual aid to teach children about agriculture.
So what are we doing with Nala today?
We're just doing a checkup.
Okay. Has she been doing okay?
If you could sum up in one word what it's like to be a small and large animal veterinarian, it would easily be busy. Stepping inside Cushing Veterinary Clinic, it only takes about 15 seconds to realize that. An environment Dr. Rebecca Hartfield thrives in.
So my favorite part about this job, especially working large animals, would be I see so many different things at the clinic every single day. So today I might be looking at a bull, and you know, later be looking at a pig or a goat.
Veterinary medicine is a field Rebecca sort of fell into.
He's got a clean bill of health, and
after taking a job as a vet technician, she found a purpose in working with animals and went back to school at Oklahoma State University and became a doctor of veterinary medicine. She graduated in 2016 and joined the clinic shortly after.
Okay. You don't have to. Heartworm test is $15.
With all the wonderful chaos Dr. Hartfield deals with every day, she still finds time to help communities through her part-time job.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Children's author.
Does anyone know what kind of doctor I am?
The book is called Rosie the Pig, a story about a girl, Abby, who takes her sick pig to the veterinarian.
Rosie, you look sick. Abby's gonna call Dr. H.
She based the story off an experience she had with her niece.
My niece Abby had actually come over to the ranch, and my pig Rosie was really sick. So we went out, we examined her, I taught her about what we were looking for, exactly what's in the book. Medicine to make her feel better.
While helping people and animals through her clinic is rewarding, Rebecca wanted to expand her reach in other ways. She just didn't have an avenue to achieve it.
I wanted to do more and make a difference. I've always been that way. A friend had called around the same time and said, hey, my daughter wants to go to veterinary school. She's young, and we want a good book for her to start on, you know, now.
And so I got to doing some research, and I really didn't find anything that I just loved.
The light bulb flashed, and Rebecca and her sister, who's a graphic designer, decided to start a children's book series. She travels around the state and visits daycares and schools to do readings. Her mission with the book is to expose kids to both veterinary medicine and agriculture.
What did we say this was again? So I want kids to be interested in agriculture. There is a shortage of rural veterinarians, especially in Oklahoma, and so we need more veterinarians to go out and work in these rural areas with the large animals. So that's what I hope that my book will also inspire.
And what Dr. Hartfield is doing is a great asset to the community of agriculture, because she's delivering a message on agriculture literacy, developing and educating on a very true level.
To reinforce her mission, Dr. Hartfield enlisted the help of a friend to further engage the little minds.
Here comes Rosie.
Today was unique for them. I don't know anybody that has a pig in their house, and also get to pet the pig, watch the pig eat, see what Rosie feels like, things like that. Those are definitely experiences that they wouldn't normally get to have unless they go to a farm.
When you bring a live animal in here and they get to pet the pig and get a picture with that pig, they're going to be talking about it for several days.
Rebecca plans to have 6 books in the series. The next book will be about a horse, appropriately named Pistol. Due out this June. Imagine the kids' faces when a horse trots into their school. For SUNUP, I'm Curtis Hare.
If you want to pet Rosie, you can give her a little pet. There you go.
Thanks for joining us as we look back at some of our favorite stories celebrating the outdoors. I'm LYNDALL STOUT. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at SUNUP.